Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for October 13th of 2023, and currently we have a slight risk for central Iowa with a marginal threat that expands into parts of northern Missouri and Illinois. This is going to be a little bit of a new type of forecast for me. I had a little bit of problems forecasting this because I didn't really know entirely what was going on. So this is going to be one of the forecasts out of any of the forecasts I probably made to take with a grain of salt, because I wasn't really sure what was going on here. But after digging in a little bit more, I'm pretty confident about what's happening here. However, there is probably a little bit of stuff that is still uncertain. So if you do catch anything that may be false or uncertain in today's forecast, please tell me in the comments, and hopefully I will be able to correct them. But as of today, with this type of forecast, there was a little bit of new stuff that I haven't really figured out yet, and I definitely did learn from this. So as for the threats for today, we are expected to see that slight risk with a 5% tornado threat, and this slight risk is going to be driven by the tornado threat. We are expected to see the primary threat for tornadoes in central Iowa, and we are expected to see a secondary wind threat, secondary 5% wind threat, and a 5% hail threat. Taking a look at our weather model, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do, focusing on this trough that we've been focusing on the last couple of days, you can see that the area that we are expected to cover for today is going to be extremely close to the area of low pressure. It's going to be in extremely close proximity to the low pressure system, which is expected to move out of Nebraska into Iowa for today's severe weather event. And we are expected to see a couple of things that are going to be attached to this. I'll go more in depth on this on our temperature models. However, we are expected to see our we are expected to see our warm front, and then we are also expected to see a cold front attached to the low pressure system, which is going to focus a warm sector out in between those two fronts to focus our area for severe thunderstorm development. And as those as those two fronts collide and occlude, we should see some severe weather development up through central Iowa. And you can see that we already have a tornado watch in place, so the atmosphere is ready and primed for tornadic development. So you definitely want to be watching for updates, staying weather alert if you live in the affected area. And because of how close proximity this area for severe weather is to the low pressure system, we are expected to see quite a bit of directional shear as it is rotating around the low pressure system. And the closer you are in proximity to the low pressure system, the more tightly wound your winds are, if that makes sense. It's a little bit hard to explain. However, the closer you are to the center of the low pressure system, the more tightly wound your winds are to that low pressure system. So the more directional shear you have to support the threat for tornadoes, the more closer to the proximity you are to the area of low pressure. So we are definitely expected to have quite a bit of directional shear to support our 5% tornado threat. And we should also see some elongated photographs to support a secondary hail threat for small hail, and the threat of damaging winds for this event as well. Taking a look at our dew points, before I get into dew points, I do want to mention that the area of low pressure that we are focusing on for today is expected to be a classic example of a cold core low pressure system setup. Typically we see areas of low pressure where mostly in the 500 millibars, the temperatures in the low pressure system in the 500 millibars are significantly colder to the area around it. Especially in the lower levels, the mid levels and upper levels will be significantly colder compared to the low levels, which will lead to overall enough instability. It will lead to instability. The difference between the temperatures in the mid levels and low levels will give us our instability, but the majority of our instability will be confined to our 3 kilometer in our very low levels. That is where we are expected to see the majority of our instability. So we are expected to have quite a bit of moisture here. Typically with cold core setups, we see significantly weaker moisture in the atmosphere. However, we are expected to see quite a bit of moisture. We are expected to see dew points are going to be getting into into the low 60s. So we are expected to have quite a bit of instability, but the majority of it is going to be confined to our low levels. Taking a look at our temperatures, focusing on the various fronts that we are expected to see attached to this low pressure system. Let me draw in our area of low pressure just so we can get an area of reference. Our warm front is expected to be extending out across Iowa into northern Illinois, and then we are expected to see our cold front that is going to be further down to the south. And as this cold front gets closer and closer to this warm front, let me play our animation forward a little bit. You can see as our warm front and cold front occlude, that is going to fire off our severe weather for today. And overall, the temperatures in the environment are expected to be pretty modest. We are expected to see temperatures that are going to be mostly in the 60s, the 50s, the low 60s. However, compared to the temperatures that we are expected to see in the 500 millibars, which I will jump over to pivotal weather really quickly so we can take a look at our 500 millibar temperatures, because radar omega does not let us do that. You will see compared to our low level temperatures and our mid-level temperatures, those are going to be vastly different compared to each other, which will give us some instability. Overall, it's going to be a little bit weaker, and our instability is going to be more so confined to our low levels. Taking a look at our instability, focusing on the warm sector between our cold front and our warm front, you can see we are expected to have significantly weaker instability compared to what we would typically expect for a 5% tornado threat. However, we are taking a look at our most unstable cape. We are expected to see most unstable cape values that are going to be mostly in the triple digits. However, that just goes to show that the majority of our instability is going to be in our low levels. I will be taking a look at our instability in our low levels. However, because of the lack of strong, most unstable cape, we are expected to see a very weak energy helicity index readings because of the lack of strong, most unstable cape. At most, we would see a 2% tornado threat if we didn't have our stronger low-level instability supporting this entire tornado threat. So overall, we are again expected to have a vastly weaker, most unstable cape, which will lead to overall weaker energy helicity index readings, and we are expected to see again the majority of our instability in our lower levels. Taking a look at our 0 to 3 kilometer cape, you can see that we are expected to have quite a bit of 0 to 3 kilometer cape. We are expected to see 0 to 3 kilometer cape that is going to be getting as high as the 200s, possibly getting up to getting very close to the 300s. Some of the pivotal weather models were indicating some 0 to 3 kilometer cape that was getting into the 300s. However, we are expected to see 0 to 3 kilometer cape that's probably going to be more so around the 1000s or 100s to 200s. So even though that may not sound like a lot, it is a lot for our 0 to 3 kilometer instability. So even if we don't have our strong overall most unstable cape, we are expected to have quite a bit of low level instability in our lower levels, which should be able to fuel and support our tornado threat for today. Taking a look at our energy helicity index, I'm going to be primarily focusing on our 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index, because our 0 to 1 kilometer doesn't show anything as far as tornado threat because of the lack of strong most unstable cape values. However, on our 0 to 3 kilometer cape or 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index, it does give us something. We are expected to see 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index readings that are going to be getting as high as 1.9, but mostly staying anywhere between 1 and 2. So we are expected to see a little bit of something for our energy helicity index readings on our 0 to 3 kilometer. But because of our lack of strong, most unstable cape to support our 5% tornado threat, we aren't really expected to see anything along the lines of what would be considered a 5% tornado threat from our energy helicity index readings because of the lack of strong, most unstable cape. However, because of our strong 0 to 3 kilometer cape and our directional shear, we should see the threat of our 5% tornado threat and the threat of a few brief tornadoes across this region. Something that is going to furthermore support these claims is our max updraft helicity, and this measures the potential for a rotating storm. So you can see where our 5% tornado threat is. We are expected to have quite a bit of areas for rotating storms to develop. A lot of our models are indicating that we should see some rotating storms and the threat of that 5% tornado threat. So it's just a little something to look at to take into account our 0 to 3 kilometer instability and the threat for our 5% tornado threat in the warm sector across Iowa. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator. Join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. If you live in any of the areas that I covered for today, please stay with the alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.